Hello and welcome to Make It Happen with Will Polston. This is episode number 2 and we're going to be talking about the importance of identifying your values. Alright, so yes, we are going to be talking about values in this episode, and just to give you a bit of a brief summary of what's to come. We're going to be talking about what values are and how they're created. We're going to be talking about the different types of values and why it's so important for you to know the different types and how you can use that to your advantage. And we're going to be talking about how by you living to your values means that you won't require motivation. So let's get stuck straight in. So we're going to be talking about axiology. So when I say axiology is just the study of values. So it's just a fancy word. It makes me sound really smart, but it's just the study of values. So what is a value? So a value is anything that you place an importance upon. So effectively anything that you deem important can be called a value. And your values are created from a perception of a void that you have. And it's really important when I say a perception of a void. So it isn't necessarily there is a void there, it's just your perception. And these perceptions can be determined from your conscious mind or from your subconscious mind. And the thing that you perceive most missing in your life then becomes what you perceive as the most important thing in your life. And understanding that your private voids are your overlying public values is really, really important. And that's why for me it's so important that when we get clear on this and we identify what your values are, then you can shape your own destiny, maybe rather than having a set of values that have been injected or projected onto you. But I'll come on to that in just a minute. So in terms of the values themselves, the more important a value is, the higher it will be on your hierarchy, because not all values are equal. There is a hierarchy, so there's an order to them. And like I said, so the more important a value is, the higher it will be on your hierarchy, and the more discipline and order you'll have associated with that thing that you value most. Additionally, it will be the thing that typically you have the best memory around, or your memory recall will be best around it. And obviously on the opposite end of the spectrum, the thing that you have or place least value on will be the thing you have least discipline and most disorder and the lowest memory recall around. So it's really important to understand these and get clear on them. And there's two types of values. So you have a means value, which is typically something that you do, and then you have an end value, which is typically a feeling. So for example, someone might have a means value of socializing with friends, but their end value is connection. And you could have somebody else that has a means value of connection, but the way that they get that is via spending time with family, for example. So a different type of, it's a different doing, so it's a different means value, but the end value is the same as what it is that they're looking to create. But ultimately, all end values are leading to fulfillment. So again, take the word fulfillment. Fulfillment. And your values come from a void. So what we're looking to do is fill that void so it is filled, and therefore we have fulfillment. Now, I'll use fulfillment a lot of the time with people instead of a word of happiness, because happiness is one end of a spectrum. The other end of the spectrum to happiness is sadness. And what's beautiful about living to your values is that you can live on the border of support and challenge, benefit and drawback, advantage and disadvantage. So you're living in balance, and that's really or certainly a perception of balance, and that's what we're looking to strive towards here is how can we get you living a fulfilled life. So the importance of identifying your values is so that you're able to consciously live and create a fulfilled life. So how do we do that? Well, let's start with how you identify what your values are first of all. So there's two different types of values that you have, as I've already mentioned, your end values and your means values. So let's start with your end values first of all. So the way that you create your end values is by getting really clear on what are the feelings that you want to cultivate. Now, I've done this quite a lot of times with a whole array of different people in a whole array of different mediums, and there's a number of different things that come up. So what are the pleasures that you can think of, or the labels that you might use for pleasure? So love, success, freedom, intimacy, security, adventure, power, passion, comfort, health. Just to give you some examples of some end goals that you might be striving towards. Think of as many other labels as you could possibly think of and put them in order. So what is most important to you at number one, down to what's least important to you as you think of these. And what we want to be looking at is is the current value, is the current order of these values, these end values, the order they need to be in for you to create the life that you want to live. So to give you a contextual example, someone might find that their number one value is security and comfort, but what they really want to do is live a life of adventure and say run their own business. Okay, well, if your highest value is comfort and security, how likely is it that you're going to be able to live a life of adventure and running your own business if you're not willing to look at taking those risks? So I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's just not maybe as possible as it could be. So getting really clear on that. That's the first thing. Now the second thing is looking at your away from values. So they're your towards values. They're your toward end values, sorry, the things that you want to move towards. And then you have your values that you move away from. So your end away values. And again, these are typically painful emotions that you might want to move away from, like rejection, anger, frustration, loneliness, depression, failure, humiliation, guilt, not being enough. You can use those as examples. Again, think of any others that you might think of and put those in order. Now, the thing that you want to avoid most is what is typically your strongest driver, because we do more to avoid pain than we do to seek pleasure, and pain gets you going, pleasure keeps you going. So what I'll do if I'm coaching clients a lot of the time is, by me having clarity on what their highest away from pain values are, I can use those to associate with their current situation. So how, for example, is if their highest away from value is guilt, how is them doing what they're doing currently, which might be procrastinating, actually causing them an element of guilt, and causing them guilt or shame or whatever else it might be that is as a result of that situation, which they're not seeing, which can sort of kickstart them into action. So they're the first two exercises. Now the next exercise to do to identify your means value, which is your sort of doing actions, or your doing priorities, if you like, is by doing the Demartini values determination process. It is without a doubt the best values determination process that I've found. There's 13 questions that you answer, and you answer 3 answers for each of them, which will leave you with 39 answers, and then you group those answers together. So we're looking for the pattern here, because we are creatures of habit typically, and there will be patterns in what you do, and by asking great quality questions we can get great quality answers. So I'm going to read the questions to you, but the best way to do this is actually go online, go onto Google, type values determination process or Demartini values determination process, and do it online. It's completely free to do. But the 13 questions are: how do you fill your space most? So what do you have around you most of the time? Now, for me, I'll typically have my wallet on me, my phone on me, my keys on me. But if I've got my phone on me, what is that representing? So what do I use my phone for the most? Or if I've got my laptop with me all the time, what do I use my laptop for the most? So for me, it would be doing personal development of some sort, learning or working on my business, just to give you an example. Then how do you spend your time most? Well, what is it you spend your time doing most of the time? Now, if you're spending your time at work, which a lot of people will be listening to this, spend a lot of their time at work, what specifically is that you do within work that you spend the most time in? So is it building relationships with people? Is it having meetings? Is it working on a particular type of project? So it'll help you get clearer on that. Then what energizes you most? Where do you get the most energy from? What is it that you do and you feel energized from? Then how do you spend your money the most? What do you spend most of your money on? Where are you most organized and ordered? So where is it in your life that you just know where everything is? You're on top of everything. It's organized and it's well ordered. Then where are you most disciplined and where are you most reliable? Because remember, your highest values is where you will be most disciplined, most ordered. It's where you have the best memory recall, so on and so forth. What do you think about the most? So internally, what is it that you're thinking about the most? What is it that's on your mind most of the time when you get caught daydreaming? What is that? Then what do you envision or visualize? So what is it that you picture in your mind's eye the most when you think about this particular, or what is it when you are visualizing that you think about? What is that particular thing? So 3 answers. What do you internally dialogue about the most? So what is it that you talk to yourself about most of the time? What do you externally dialogue? So what is it you talk to other people about? What is it that you find conversations typically come back to most of the time? Or when you are meeting someone new for the first time, it's the place where you typically want to take that topic to. What are you most inspired about? What is it that sort of fires you up? What do you find you set your goals towards the most? So what is it that when you are setting goals, you're typically setting goals about? And what is it you read or study about the most? And that doesn't necessarily have to be read books or study on courses. It could be read online, blogs. It could be watching on YouTube. Now, once you have those answers, and again, doing it online is the best way to do this, you'll be able to identify what are your highest values, and you create that priority list. And as I've explained already, that your values are created from a perception of voids. So my top 4 highest values are self-mastery, building businesses, creating wealth, and creating relationships, or building relationships, developing relationships. So I spend most of my time I try to spend most of my time doing exactly those things, because they're the things that I get the most fulfillment from. So right now it's a Sunday. A lot of people are chilling out, relaxing, doing whatever. I'm here in the office. I've been working on what I want to put into this podcast episode, covering it, and I'm absolutely okay with that because I love it. I feel great. I've been here hours, and I'm sort of enjoying myself, sat here doing exactly this. So that's the means process. Now, if you want to change the order of your values, it's a very simple process, and it starts with making the decision. So saying, right, I want to change the order of my values, and the way that we do that is by stacking the benefits to something that is already higher on the values list. So for example, for me, if I wanted to increase my building relationships value, which is currently number 4 for me, I would look for as many benefits, primary benefits, secondary benefits, and tertiary benefits, which I'll explain what they are in a moment, to a value that is already above it in the 8 key areas of life. So family, family, health and fitness, relationships, social life, attitude, career, finances, my own personal growth, my own personal development. So I'll look for the benefits in that, and the more benefits I find, it's like having scales. It will start tipping it up by me finding more benefits to having or building relationships. How will that benefit my personal development? So to give you some contextual examples, well, if I work harder at building relationships, that will benefit my personal development because I will be able to learn more from other people. Okay, which is a massive one for me. I can learn new subjects. I can apply those learnings to myself, which will ultimately benefit the way that I feel and the things that I do. So hopefully that has given you an understanding of the importance of that. In terms of taking that to the next level, so really taking this to the next level and utilizing another John Demartini learning, is something called the 7 levels of consciousness. Okay, and the reason the 7 levels of consciousness is so important is the 7 tiers to it. So the way this works and the 7 levels are organized is the things that you value most. Sorry, if you're living to your highest values, you will be most inspired. Okay, so if you're living to your highest values, you'll be most inspired. Take the word inspired, break it down. It means in spirit or in energy. So you're most energized. If you are living, you're not living your values, you'll be living somebody else's values. And those other values will be values that have been injected or projected onto you. So that could be from parents, other family members, teachers, could be just society in general as a way of conditioning. And if you're living to values that aren't yours, then you will lack you'll lack inspiration, and you'll constantly require external motivation. So inspiration comes from within, motivation comes externally. And the beauty of living to your highest values is that you don't require external motivation. It's like a renewable, it's an untapped renewable energy source that if you use it and use it consciously, which I'll come on to explain in a moment how you do that, you can find yourself living a very fulfilled life and very rarely having to operate from pain or pleasure and experience. And you won't even have to experience pain in the way that most of us have been brought up experiencing it. So, certainly psychological pain anyway, so suffering. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, you get clear on your values, your means values, and then you look to live to them in the best way you can. Now, Wayne Dyer famously once said, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change the way you think about it. And that's exactly what we can do with our values. So the 7 levels are, the verbal expression of them are you love to, choose to, desire to. So from top to bottom, I'm explaining these. Love to, choose to, desire to, want to, need to, ought to, have to. Now, if you are living someone else's values, I will know that you're doing that, and you will be able to know that you're doing that because of the language you're using. So you'll be using language like you have to, ought to, or need to. If you're living your values, you'll be saying things like I desire to, I choose to, I love to. So the level of consciousness in the way that this is explained as part of John Demartini's breakdown here is that the level of consciousness is a suicidal level if you have to, ought to is survival, need to is security, want to is social, desire to is self-esteem, choose to is self-fulfillment, and love to is self-actualization. Now, where this gets really interesting is when it breaks down to the perception. So the perception that you have of whether something is good, in inverted commas, or bad, in inverted commas. So if you see something as there's 7 negatives, if you like, to the 1 positive, it will be something you have to do. And then at the other end of the spectrum is something you love to do, is that when you see it as equal, so it's equally as good and equally as bad. And the stage of evolvement in this side of things is sort of a higher level of thinking as a human being, sort of what John Demartini refers to as a spiritual human in the stage of evolvement. And what I love about this is by you applying this process, something I'm about to explain to you in a moment, when you are clear on what your values are, you can have significant moments of inspiration. You can break through the psychological barriers that have been holding you back. So to use an example is, if there's something you don't want to do, or you perceive something to be a negative, in inverted commas, because you've got to remember, positive and negative, good, bad, happy, sad, they're all ends of a spectrum. Okay, they're just either ends of a spectrum. And by changing your perspective of the spectrum will enable you to get a different experience. So what we will do is get you to see a different perspective by doing what we call a benefit stack. So you would, for example, your highest value, if there's something that you're seeing as a negative, by asking the question, right, how is this serving my highest values and listing the answers to that, then looking at what's the benefit of that, and then what's the benefit of that. So the primary benefit, the secondary benefit, and the tertiary benefit will give you a change. It's like if you could imagine scales, right? You had a brick on the scales, and then you had a grain of sand on the scales. If you keep adding grains of scales, eventually those scales are going to be equal. So by you looking for the benefits, finding the benefits, the primary, secondary, and tertiary benefits in what your situation as it stands at the moment will enable you to have a breakthrough and feel inspired about what's going on now. What's the beauty of inspiration is that when you're in inspiration, things aren't a problem, in inverted commas. So if you had a problem, but it met your values, then it then becomes a challenge. Now, you will have inspired challenges and uninspiring problems. And the way that you create that shift is, like I say, by doing a benefit stack so that you can be clearer in that respect. And the beauty of being able to do that is that you're operating from the third driver, which is using your conscious brain to create a result. Most of us, the amygdala, which is the reptilian brain, operates on pain or pleasure. Okay, so we avoid pain and we seek pleasure. But by being clear on your values and living to your values, you move into a third driver, which is the driver of inspiration. And that's what I really want you to be able to live by, because then what it does is it balances out the ups and downs, the elations and the deflations, the happy moments, the sad moments, to be able to live in a state of inspiration. And what I'll cover in a future episode is the beauty of living in a state of inspiration is that you're able to get into a state of gratitude or unconditional love, which is the real feeling that we're looking for. So coming back to that perception thing, when things are equal, there is no void, whereas when there's as much as a 7-to-1 ratio, you'll see a slightly altered, lopsided perception of something, which can also go the other way as well. So if you see more positives than negatives, then you'll be elated with the situation, which is typically an infatuation of the situation. So I hope that you found that extremely interesting. It is, I can't stress it enough, one of the most important things that you can do is get really clear on your values. So just to recap, some exercises for you that I highly recommend you go away and do. Do the values, the John Demartini values determination process online. Answer the 13 questions. Get clear on what your current hierarchy is. Secondly, do the end values, which you have to do in two different ways. You're towards end values and you're away from end values list, and do the breakdown using the examples that I gave you, and then reorder your towards end values if you need to, and then be aware of what your away from values are, because we'll do more to avoid pain than we will to seek pleasure. So just be very much aware of that when you are getting clear. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up this episode. I hope you found it useful, and we will get cracking on with the next episode very soon. Until next time, make it happen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make It Happen with Will Polston podcast. Make sure you join Will's free Facebook group, the Make It Happen community. Please support the show by subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Google Play. Share this episode with at least one friend you think would benefit from it, and give Will a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts. Until next time, make it happen.